Pasha Pyro, YNet7. Thank you for tuning. The replay. Got Trish McCabe back with us, YNet7. Okay, on the last one, we were talking about contracts and all the developments of that. And we're kind of going to jump right into the title of the day, project / projection. Okay.
Cool.
Trish,
Love it.
break the ice with that for us, please.
Projection. I saw a really great meme that's been floating around, and it's like something like, what I see in you, I change. What I don't like in you, I change in myself. You know, there's a lot of things we see in other people that we don't realize is a part of our own behavior, and that might be why we recognize it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
There's a lot of elements to projection, and gaslighting plays a role as well. How can I'm trying to think of the best way to like break it down. It also has to do with judgments. When you have a judgment about something, a personality trait that somebody has, and you think it's this, you'll deflect, you don't like it, and you'll be like, oh, you know, I don't possess that. But we all do. If you really get honest, we all possess every trait, every human trait that there is. And so when we haven't dealt with something within ourselves, we tend to project it and put it out onto this other person, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Now that you mention it, because that book that you introduced me to, the Dark Side of the Light Worker. So yeah. I did the video recently on that, the first couple the second chapter of that one, and it was really good because it had a great analogy talking about the castle and how you're a castle, and you know, somebody comes in, starts talking about you or whatever, one of your rooms, and you go and lock the door, and eventually you had 1,000 rooms that you were really happy about, and now you only have 2, you know, so because you unlocked them all up.
Yeah. Yes. There's a guy that also has a great book. The guy that did all the Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, John Gray. He's wonderful. And he talks about projection in some of his books of when you have a judgment about something. Let's say you, like, I noticed when I read that book, The Dark Side of the, excuse me, Light Chasers.
Yeah,
I realized I had a like, when I'll use this, J-Lo. I had this big judgment about J-Lo and how I thought she was a hoochie mama. But you know, her scantily clad and all that, I had a judgment about it, and because I had a judgment about that, I didn't allow myself the freedom to express myself in my attire as much as maybe I could have. Anyways, you know, once I realized I had that going on, I gave myself permission to be a little bit more expressive in my attire, especially as an entertainer. And the freedom that came with that.
Yeah.
Because my mom was very modest. You know, my mom taught us to be really modest, and almost to a fault. So I realized I wasn't fully expressed. And so it was such a great feeling, not only to give myself the freedom to dress a little bit more scantily clad, but instead of judging other women, it was such a free feeling to see them go, you go, mama, you run on, you rock on, you know? It just lifted that judgment about, but that was a room in my castle that was boarded up in my psyche of judgments, bad and wrong, don't do this, kind of thing, if that relates to what you were saying.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about that.
I think so. Let's take a look at the, okay, I got this up here real quick. Let me get the current image up here. And so, bam. Okay, so project. All right. project from 1400 in the noun form of that, it was plan, draft, scheme, something thrown forth, right? I think that's
Right.
really important, those particular words, and we'll, me, I'll throw them in there in the mix
Yes,
as we
I love
go.
it.
So
Awesome.
then you got the modern thing that people think about, the meaning of a group of low rent apartment buildings, right? Then you got the verb, which is kind of like plan, devise. So that's a spin off of that. But now when you get down to projection itself, this was really, I think, fascinating, because projection in 1477, which was its earliest documented use, at least per this history here, the conversion of a baser metal into gold. So the alchemy, turning like lead
Oh,
or iron
wow.
or bismuth
Very
or
interesting.
into gold. So knowing what you know about projection, um, you know, I'm gonna touch on the plan, the draft, and the schemes, and then that whole concept of converting a lesser metal into gold. Good. Let me get some words
Okay.
from you.
I love it. I love it. Wow, the converting. Wow, that's very interesting.
Yeah.
Hmm. How how would that apply? I mean, obviously that's an antiquated, we don't use that word in that way. And as you were saying before, words evolve and they change as through the generations and end up
Mhm.
meaning something completely different. But it is interesting because you do think about that alchemy thing, the alchemist.
Mhm.
Um, and I guess working with what you have, transmuting it. I want to say transmute. There's an element of transmuting when she talks about it in the book, of incorporating something that you don't like. What I remember about the book is she talks about the judgment about being a bitch, right?
Yeah.
That was something I didn't like. My mom was so overbearing, and I'd never wanted to be like my mom. So, but see, you and I both talk about duality,
Mhm.
and she does this in the book too. There are pros and cons to every trait. And sometimes it's necessary to be a bitch. What a behavior that they consider what being a bitch looks like.
Mhm.
Um, and sometimes it's, some people say if you're defending yourself, you're being a bitch, but it's not true. You're defending yourself. And sometimes you're just being a bitch.
Yeah,
Um,
and it's, like you
yes,
said, like you say often, that energy that is in that mindset somewhat is might be what's needed to actually protect you during that time period from whatever it is you're dealing with, to
yes,
take it to that level. So yeah.
yeah. Um, that you so much in our outer world is a reflection of ourselves. How can it not be, since we're all human and we all have these traits? But when we don't own them, which is the shadow part, which he talks in the book, this the boarded up rooms, we're not being true to ourselves. We're not being real with ourselves. And many things, oh, I'm not like that. When in truth, if you look at it, you are, because you're human.
Right.
It's a part of you. It's like I see so many people in various groups, like the Ron Dass group. You have to control your emotions. Well, but the problem with that is, if you don't allow yourself to feel them, you're not going to be able to be authentic. If you don't allow yourself to say, hey, I am a bitch, or when we're talking about traits, which we all have, if they're boarded up, we're not being honest with ourselves that they exist within us. So we'll get triggered when we see it in other people.
And that leads us into the projection, because
Yes,
like the definition here for the psychological projection, or at least a description of it, is the process of misinterpreting what is inside as
yes,
coming from the outside. So
yes,
it says it forms the basis of empathy by the projection of personal experiences to understand someone else's subjective world.
yes. And
So
that's a lot. So a lot of people
yeah.
are not going to, but this is so important, because we just do this so much, all of us on this planet, every human being does this, and they don't realize they're doing it. That's why people get triggered. There's when we get triggered, we're being signaled that there's a part in our psyche that's boarded up and deemed bad and wrong, and we haven't dealt with it. And so it needs to be addressed, if that makes any sense. It wants to live, it wants to be heard, it
Yeah.
wants you to know it's a part of you, kind of thing.
And that's
And
it.
to think
It
about
was going over that in the book, and it was saying how because you locked that door, right, it's going to, like you said, cry out to become back part of the whole. And what's actually happening is you're mirroring yourself in others around you. So if you have this whatever it is that you're judging others for, it's because you've locked that part up on yourself, and basically like yourself is seeing that being freely displayed in them, and you're you're suppressing it in
yes,
yourself. And that's
yes,
the conflict, because
yes,
going back to contracts, the last one we did, you wrote a contract in your mind saying, I don't have this characteristic or trait.
I don't
I'm not,
want, yeah,
yeah, I'm not narcissist, I'm not this, I don't do this, right? And then when you see it in others, it like
triggers,
attracts like, so it's like the animal wants to
yes,
get out of the cage and go play with the other animal, you know what I mean? And you're like, no,
absolutely.
no, you don't supposed to exist, get out of here, what are you doing? So you attack the person because of the way you feel about yourself.
I love it. Yes, 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 yes. I was just talking with a girlfriend of mine about this very thing. We have similar issues. Our mothers were very toxic. Both of them were alcoholics. My mom could really be a bitch, and we told ourselves, oh no, I don't want anything. I don't want that. The problem is you end up throwing the baby out with the bathwater, because sometimes it's necessary to be a bitch. It's necessary to have these behaviors, to be angry when something makes you angry. But we're like, no, I'm not going to be angry. I'm not going to be like my mom. My mom is so angry and yelling and da 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 da. And you're stymied. You don't have the scope of your full self-expression when that happens.
Right.
And then someone displays that behavior and it triggers you because of what you said.
Yeah, and I like the word trigger because it at that moment, it causes the reaction. Now, we talked a lot about gaslighting, like you brought up, narcissistic behaviors, all kinds of stuff in that level. And then when we go to the word plan, right? Check this out. So when we jump in and look at the word plan,
Yeah.
let's see here.
What I say, project,
Is this on it?
plan,
So
draft.
yeah, so plan is it originally was plane perpendicular to the line of vision, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
Now, I like it as far as to what we're talking about when it gets down to, because it says plane, surface, ground, plan, map. So you got a map, right? And the meaning of a drawing, this is the recent kind of sort of, right? The meaning of a drawing on a flat surface and the sense of a scheme of action designed, method are first recorded in 1706. So about 30 years after it came out the meaning of drawing on a flat surface. So originally you had ground plan, plane surface, the perpendicular line of vision. So it's like a cross, right? Coming across your plane of vision. And then
Right.
you have a map originally. So now map is kind of like one of the original meanings. And then if you're going to say drawing, a drawing on a flat surface, a sense of scheme of action, it's like when we were talking about the contracts and the narcissistic behavior and the gaslighting, someone, if you're not in control of yourself and know who you are emotionally and mentally, someone will draw the map for you so that they can put the puppet strings on you. And that's kind of like what projection is once you take
Yeah.
the bait, so to speak, and get
Yeah.
into it, right? Tell us about that.
Oh gosh, I mean, I don't know. Hmm, I guess it goes back to what I was saying. If you have a judgment about something,
Mm-hmm. You're
you'll
selfish.
Oh yeah, right. Yes.
You're
I get over.
judgmental.
Yeah. You're judgmental. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm trying to think of a I remember when you say that, that makes me think years ago, a friend had told me, gosh, you're really being selfish.
Hmm.
And I finally allowed myself to, in that instance, I was like, yeah, this is the time where I need to be selfish.
Hmm.
And it was a really a great shift for me because I was like, you're right. And I'm okay with that. You know what I mean? And I think that that particular person, in my view, was a very selfish individual
Hmm.
um in their behavior. And so I feel they were projecting, they were not wanting to look at themselves. It's
Ah,
it was
you bring up
odd
a
to
good point.
me that she was telling me I'm selfish. I'm like, really? The pot calling the kettle, and I wanted to tell her all these various things, but instead I just took it in and I went, normally I go, oh, I am not. But I finally went, well, if this what selfish is, it was a time where I was needing something, trying to get a need met, well, then yeah, I'm okay with that. But yeah, it's a very confusing thing. That's why I wanted to start the ball rolling also on myself because I'm still working with these truths. I'm still working through them myself. So,
Mhm.
but
That,
yeah,
that's actually pretty good that you brought that up, like the way like that, because I like when you said that they said that you were selfish, right? And
yes,
you were looking at them saying, "Wow, you're like one of the most selfish people I know." How could
yes,
basically like how could that come out of your mouth, right? So I'm thinking about it as that must have been like the bait that they be talking about because I did a little research on it myself. And like for example, it says as soon as you try to discuss, explain, defend, argue, teach, cry, attack, back, um, give yourself up, project back, or any other number of ways of protecting against the projection itself, from the person that's actually
that's true.
projecting you.
Yeah,
It says now they can do exactly what they want to do, which is to focus on what you are doing rather than
deflect.
on themselves. So that
Yes,
I had that in the back of my mind. And then when you said that example, I was like, oh, snap. So yeah, we know about it being like the defensive, like they got something repressed in themselves that they're hiding, and then they lash out because they see it in you. But now, when you said that, it was like, oh, you know what? She was probably just mad that you beat her to the punch of being selfish in that
yes.
interaction. Like that was
Because
her.
she's
She was,
not allowing herself that, she's not going to allow anyone else to. This is
yeah.
where it gets really toxic. If you've not dealt with this thing and it's bad and wrong, that goes back to what I was saying about J-Lo. You're
Mhm.
not going to let anyone else be that either. You're going to be like, no, I don't want that. So
Yeah.
guess what? I don't like you because you're that.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know. It's very this is a really confusing topic. And but it's really important that we talk about it so we can get the clarity that we're that's who we're about. We're about getting the clarity. So yes, going back to my friend who called me selfish, I thought, wow, really, you're telling me I'm selfish,
Right.
and I just really but I had dealt with that judgment. Because projections really are what's behind it is a judgment of something within you. You have
Hmm.
a judgment about it. It's like what she talks about in the book, the bitch part, and she stuffed that down. It was like bitch is bad and wrong. Don't ever be a bitch. But so then what ends up happening is there are those times when you don't have a choice and you are one, you feel bad and then you have an inner conflict. It creates a lot of inner conflicts this way when you haven't dealt with your darker side,
Yeah.
the things that you think are bad and some of them maybe may even be bad, but it's so yeah. I'm trying to think of a way to language it that it makes sense.
Nah, we gonna pull it out. We gonna extract it, so to speak, for the people. So, I think I know you went back to okay, she was trying to hide it in herself, but now think about let's say you're playing that's a chess move situation, right? You're there with with your supposed buddy. You guys are having your conversation, and she's sitting there like this. What moment? I'm just waiting on the right moment to drop in this selfishness on her. This is gonna be good. And then bam, Trish hit her with selfishness first, right? And she's like, how dare you do it first? You are being selfish. Because in her mind, she's saying, in her heart, in her mind, she's like, I was supposed to do it to you first. How dare you make me feel like you're being selfish before I made you feel like you're being selfish? Who do you think you are?
It really is true. And also too that
she
we
might have
have
known she was selfish, you know?
and then yeah.
That'd be the plan.
In hindsight, I don't think she really knew. And
Okay.
but I know the kind that you're talking about. That would be like, I have a family member's partner who's very much like that, projects everything she's so guilty of.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so yeah. And it's interesting because they'll call you out while they're doing it even.
Right.
But and it really just comes down to unowned parts of ourselves we haven't owned up to.
Yeah.
Behaviors that we adhere to, you know, that we don't realize we're doing it, even though we say, no, I don't do that, but we do. And the importance of this is to understand, and that's why I like that meme that said, what I don't like about you, I change in myself.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a really great way to address projection. It's a great way. It's like, I don't like that. What is that about? Why don't I like that?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I change it in myself because I do it and I haven't owned up to that truth. I haven't owned up to that behavior. And
Right.
and that's what you do when you find yourself getting triggered by something. Even it is an element of yourself trying to get your attention
Yeah, it wants
about
to live too.
yourself, something in you that hasn't been dealt with and addressed, recognized, and understood. And then, of course, alchemy, transmute, and bring it within. And it becomes a tool on a tool belt rather than something you're always fighting. I'm not that, I'm not that, I'm not that. And
Right.
once you incorporate it and you own up to it and you get real with yourself, suddenly it's a gift.
That's the beauty of it, like you're saying, because you locked it away because you thought it was bad, like you thought it was a piece of lead that had no real value or purpose, right? And it was bad for you, they said, if you stay around it too long. And then what you're doing is you're taking that negative quote unquote aspect, at least in your mental, whoever's got you to sign the contract, that is something wrong with it, and you're going to, like we talked about last, renegotiate the terms of the contract or renegotiate the contract and turn that lead, unlock the door, get the piece of lead and make it valuable as gold. You're going to turn it into gold in your life because, like you said, you're going to now see the value of when to apply it in your life in certain applications, and it's going to save you, benefit you, etc. And yeah, turn it into gold.
And why is that? Because what we're talking about, and she talks about it in the book, is the duality of things. Mm-hmm. That there are pros and cons to, I think, just pretty much everything. And when you throw the baby out with the bathwater, you're not only throwing the bad thing out, you're throwing the good thing out. The thing the way in which you benefit from this trait when it's necessary. That's why blanket statements are dangerous, because it negates the truth of duality. It negates the truth that there are times when this behavior is called for.
Mm-hmm.
Like murder. If someone's trying to kill your child, you might have to murder them in defending them, or anybody else is trying to murder you, your family members, your loved ones, and murder is horrible. Well, but then what ends up happening is when you don't allow yourself self-defense, you're not peaceful, you're harmless.
Yeah, you gotta get violent. You gotta be violent.
You have to be able to have that ability to do that, or you're vulnerable. That makes you vulnerable. This is something that's been on my mind. What makes a person vulnerable? But we'll talk about that later, because they talk about vulnerability is a bad thing, but it's not true.
Yeah,
Okay.
Like you got, like even in conversation, you gotta learn to, and that's the thing. That's wow. That's part of the castle thing, and ties into projection and the contracts. Because if you aren't comfortable enough with that room yourself that you locked up and hid away, like you're not gonna want to speak about it, and that's why they're projecting on you that there's something wrong. But if you once you get to the point where you can talk about those elements in yourself, it's freeing, it's liberating. So look at this, right? The
Yes, yes.
definition, the definition of the word draft. So as a noun, okay, in 1543, all right, it was a privy later extract of distillation. So I thought this was pretty cool. There's some earlier versions of it from when you trace it back from what the other words meant in other languages that they borrowed it from. So, but in 1543, extract of distillation. And when we look at what distillation is, right? Distillation is, there's two definitions, there may be more, but we'll go with the top two here. The action of purifying a liquid by a process of heating and cooling. Now, I think that's pretty important because that heating and cooling is like your emotional temperature. You know what I mean? Like somebody got you hot. You know what I mean?
That's a great
They made me
metaphor.
hot. And then I
Oh
said,
yeah.
right? And then, or why you being so cold? Since you want to be cold, show them be like this. You know what I mean?
Oh
So they're taking you out of your
yes,
element. They're
yes.
the action of purifying a liquid by process of heating and cold. And when you say purifying in a sense, and applying it to the people and the relationships and interactions and stuff, we're not going to think about like straining the pulp from your orange juice. We're going to think about, but the removing that pulp is whatever the goodness was to take you into the direction that they want you to be going into. You know what I mean? That's that puppet string. All right. So
Oh my gosh. Oh
yeah,
my gosh.
so
Yes.
the second, I'm gonna put this on here. I want to hear what you guys say. So the second definition is the extraction of the essential meaning or most important aspects of something. So now here we go again. By that heating and cooling or that manipulation, they're going to extract the essential meaning or the most important aspects of you, and that's going to rob you of your gold and turn you into lead. Boom. How you feel about that?
Okay. It goes back to what you said earlier. And this is where projection really, people don't realize they're doing it a lot of the time. Like when she said, I was being selfish. And she got mad. How dare you be okay with being selfish? Because she's not okay with it.
Mm.
She's not okay with it. And she hasn't dealt with that. She also has a judgment about it. So when you free yourself, people are going to get really triggered because they haven't allowed themselves that freedom.
Yep.
So that's why I got jealous or whatever of J-Lo. How dare she be a hoochie mama? How dare she dress in scantily clad, How dare she dress like that? Who does she think she is? And I thought, so it was so great. After I read that book, I went, oh my God. I saw all my judgments. I started looking at my judgments a little bit more intently. And I thought, wow, how am I? I've been robbing myself of the full scope of my self-expression. Okay, there's balance to all things. You don't want to go too far. You don't want extremes, but I was too extreme on one end where I had stifled myself and made it bad and wrong when it's just not true.
Exactly.
Not all the time. You know what I mean? There's a time and a place for things and balance for things. So, man, how liberating it was to be able to dress like that and to give myself permission to dress like that and give myself permission to be a bitch when it was necessary. And people that haven't done that are really, they're going to be triggered by you. They're going to project. They're going to, because they haven't dealt with that judgment. They haven't dealt with that boarded up room.
Right.
They haven't addressed it. And a projection has a lot. It's very much tied to triggers in my experience. So
it's like it's like when you are the one that tells the truth and focused on the truth, people will try to, it's almost like you're the antichrist in society. Like, oh my God, how dare you tell the truth?
I'm not that.
You want me to believe the truth?
Oh my God.
You're taking my bliss away. And then you got to sit there and say, you know what? Well, maybe I am the Antichrist. Let's just go ahead and rock out then with it. You know what I mean? So we're gonna do
And
this thing.
it goes, yes. Like for instance, and I've said this before, I'm part of these groups of healing and recovering from narcissistic relationships, narcissistic abuse.
Mhm.
And I'll see them in there and they'll be saying, he's a this and he's a that, and he left me for this person, and how dare he, and da 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 da. And what they don't realize is that is also narcissistic behavior.
Yeah.
The condemnation, the judgmentalness, the making them bad and wrong. When love does not come from that. And it's like, I've asked a few people, okay, so this person left you, then you really loved them. Yes, I really loved him, and he left me. I'm like, well, if he's happy where he is, aren't you happy for him?
Right.
Don't you want him to be happy? If he left you, it's because he wasn't happy with you. So what are you saying? He has to stay with you and be unhappy to make you happy? Well, that's narcissism.
Exactly.
That's narcissistic behavior. It's projection.
It's
You're
like,
yelling at him, but you're also playing a role in it. Sorry, go ahead.
no, you're good. You're good. I'll be anxious. I'll be like, oh, so I'll be when you're saying that though, it made me think of like, it's like how they went to war to fight terrorism, and they became the terrorists.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes. Like, a friend of mine was telling me about this guy that doesn't like organized religion, particularly Christianity, and he has a podcast. And in his podcast, he points out verses and various events that happen. And I just wanted to ask him, where else in society do you see this behavior?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If you really get down to the nitty gritty, you
Exactly.
see it everywhere.
Yeah.
Then we're having the real conversation. You're making it about the Christian, not the behavior. Once again, we come back to that. And that is projection. That's the ultimate example of projection. Look at what he's doing, He's bad and wrong. Well, bad and wrong is, you don't like when they're condemning, but you're doing it now.
It's gonna be the next
You've
song.
now become a condemner, We got to move away from the condemnation. Just
right.
Call the behavior out if it's harmful. And it really comes back to the labels. Like I told you before, I saw my own toxic behavior where someone cut us off when we were driving. I'm like, what a jerk. No, he's not a jerk. He's behaving as a jerk. Do I know him? No, I don't know him. Do I know if he had a bad day? Maybe somebody died on him. Maybe he just found out he had terminal illness. He's behaving that way. That's not who he is. When we make the person the behavior, we don't give him a chance to do better. We just relegate them into this bad and wrong, and then we never address the problem, which is always the behavior.
Right. And the irony of that whole statement with the behavior factor, because basically what he did to cut you off is he jerked the car, and you're like, wow, what a jerk. It was like almost like a sports play where they were like, oh, what a spin move. He was like, oh, what a jerk. That was an amazing jerk to get into traffic in the middle of doing 45 miles an hour at a 20. You know what I mean? Like, so.
But the thing is,
human.
how do we know he wasn't swerving to avoid an animal or something happened in a car? We don't know that.
Exactly.
So there's sometimes where jerking away from something can save your life. So this goes back to the duality and everything, and that when we don't address the truth of duality and we just banish this thing bad and wrong, we don't have the full scope of expression. We don't get to be whole.
Right. And I like that you said you don't have the full scope of expression, because when we look at scheme, it means figure of speech, right? Shape, figure, form. Okay.
Love that. Great. Yeah. And figure of speech. Great. I love it.
I know we know that the phrase figure of speech, what it means, right? But let's make it more like of a projection, like from a projector in your old classrooms we used to have with a teacher, the overhead projector, and we're gonna put this on display. So let's look at it more like to actually figure the speech, like to manipulate it to be what you want it to be palatable because you're projecting onto the other person. You're figuring their speech for them. Whoa.
Wow.
Whoa. Take it to the moon, Trish.
When people, I'm not getting into names or anything, so let me just try to do this neutrally. In the political arena, we have seen some political figureheads behave very poorly.
Mm.
And then I see the opposing side attack them. Oh, he's a this and he's a mother, he's an abuser and asshole. Really? Your behavior looks an awful lot like him right about now.
Mm. The devil's in the
Who's
details.
the asshole now? Like, while you're deeming him bad and wrong, it's just, but you're doing the same behavior that you don't like about him or her. People say the Karens. I see that statement, the Karens. And I laugh because I'm like, we're all Karens. Come on, get real. We're all Karens.
Throwing that bait out there.
Yes, I'm not like that. I'm not like him. And then you see people emphatically saying that, they haven't addressed something within themselves. They haven't addressed that issue. And it will continue to come up for them and bother them until they do. They will continue to be triggered because they haven't owned up that they too can be belligerent, be a Karen, whatever.
This is not about me.
Not at all. Right, yes. But everything is. And that's, yeah. It really, that's why they say everything is a mirror of ourselves. And until we really, really are being honest, you're going to trigger people when you allow yourself the freedom to be a bitch, to be controlling. Sometimes controlling is good. People saying, oh, don't be needy. Or don't be, what's the word? Don't get attached. Well, there's such a thing as a healthy attachment. When you aim this bad and wrong, it's a really scary thing to do. It's a very extremist thing to do. And again, it robs you of all that you are. But we've said that. So I don't know if I made any sense, because I know how all the tentacles connect, and it's getting it into a way to say it that is a little bit more, palatable or whatnot. So
I think you did, because it really brings us back to the other one where the devil is in the details of the contract, and you have to be aware of what others are trying to get you to sign, and or you have to be able to renegotiate the terms and conditions once you discover it for yourself. Otherwise, you're going to take this bait all day long.
It makes me think of Tom Petty. And I think I brought him up before. He was single-handedly responsible for changing the music industry, because he signed a contract, and he signed all his publishing away. And when you realize he did that, that was pretty much everything. And it's something that you said made me think of him. I lost my train of connection there.
He signed away his whole contract.
He signed away. Once he realized what he had done, he didn't know. He didn't really understand how publishing works.
Yeah.
So it was kind of cool because, and this is really the magic of what he did, was he realized, wait a minute, so I have signed all my publishing away to the record company. So the only time I can make money is in tours. And so when he wasn't going, he had a 5-album contract, which was the standard contract with a record label. And so I want to say it was his second or third album. I'm so bad, I don't remember this, but I want to say it was the second, or it was Damn the Torpedoes, anyways, which ended up being his biggest selling record, one of them anyways. And anyways, so when he realized, wait a minute, I sold all of my publishing to my songs away. So I basically have nothing to lose. And he acted out of that truth that it's like, you can't take anything away from me. I've already haven't lost. And he fought them anyways. He ended up winning. It was really incredible. And he also got a distribution deal. He got complete creative control and a distribution deal out of it. He became the owner of the distribution of his material. It was really uncanny. And also, he did a lot of things. He just did a lot of things, but he realized he didn't know the details basically of
Right.
that contract. And so sometimes, you're going to sign a contract and you're going to realize what you've done, and then you can do it differently next time. So you will learn that if you don't address the details and you don't understand what's in the contract, you will pay dearly. So sometimes you have to. But he found a really good way to turn around. But anyways, yes. When things are vague, that's going to happen. But we talked about that. That's when there's just not enough clarity from the get-go, either in the verbal contract or the written contract. It's not gonna go well for you if you're not protecting yourself. The great way to protect yourself in all things is to understand what the details are in anything you're discussing at all, in your daily living even. That's why it's so important to ask, hey, what do you mean by that? So many people on a daily basis, they don't ask that, and they think they understand, or they're like, it's no big deal. And later they realize they didn't even know the true meaning of that word, even whatever it was. This, I got it,
Mhm.
no, you don't. and you get into a pickle. So
So
that's why it's so important we're talking about this, right?
absolutely. And that pickle is oftentimes you're in conflict with yourself. So I want to ask you something, Trish. For the people, let's say you've been working hard, you come into a bountiful situation, and you go and buy your dream home. Now remember, this is from okay, this is from, let's carry this over from, you had this magnificent castle and people came in, had you shutting doors, knocking off stuff, to the point where you started demolitioning the castle. Instead of just locking the doors, you were just destroying the whole wings and taking it apart and getting rid of it completely, right? And then now you're looking at the fixer-upper remains of what was once a magnificent castle. So you work hard. That's like you had somewhere in life, you fell off, your castle's demolished, you rebuild, or you go and get a brand new one. How do you feel now that you got the key to your brand new castle in your hand and it's sitting there in the background? What would that feel like?
Wow, well, it's a profound feeling. I had to address some about 3 years ago. Oh, Four of Worlds. I had started a relationship and it went south, and I had to come to terms with the truth that there was too much water under the bridge. Once I realized that and I needed to leave, it was very scary but empowering at the same time, because I now knew how to build a better castle, how to build a better relationship. I also knew what was really missing underneath it all was myself, but that's a whole other. The builder, if he doesn't know what he's doing, if you're building this castle and if you don't understand why the first castle crumbled, if I'm
Mhm,
making any sense here,
mhm.
sometimes the castle needs to crumble for you to know how to really build one
Yes.
that is has a solid foundation,
Yes.
right?
I'm so glad you said that, because you have to destroy it so that you can rebuild anew. When you had that old one, right? and you realize that the foundation is in disarray and disrepair. You have to you have to get rid of it all so that you can build up now properly on a firm foundation, on a steady foundation. The number 4 is about stability. So you got,
Yeah.
it's a symbol of law, system, and order, right? You got some
Yes.
firmness going on.
Yes.
And just like you said, right, when you had to leave that place. So this card is timely. I was shuffling the deck. It's the 4 of Wands. And when you said it, what you just said is like you had to leave that home or that situation, right? So you had to leave that behind. So this card could be dual purpose. It could be one, they're celebrating because they're leaving behind this home for the next one. Or at the same time, or this could be them arriving at the new home, celebrating the arrival of the new. Now think about it.
Yes.
If we had to go in and somebody talks you into like we talked about in the closing the doors on the castle from the book you recommended, you don't shed it, you don't fell out of love with what you once were super in love with yourself. So
Yes.
the satisfaction, the celebration, the rejoice, the rest, right, of the new home or the new beginning is a great emotion,
It
because you
really
don't,
is.
once you come over that gaslighting, you come through that, you make your way through the projections of people, other people onto you, and you
Oh, yes.
find the beauty of your whole castle in its complete, entire magnificence. And now you're back whole again. And guess what it took to get there? You had to renew the contract, renegotiate the terms on the new home, and now you're out there celebrating and rejoicing in front of the brand new you.
It's like the caterpillar butterfly element, you know, or
Exactly.
like the phoenix. You know,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it's like trees. Sometimes when they burn down, they come back stronger. There's an element that happens in the burning process that empowers you on this whole other level.
Mm-hmm.
And then it is transmutation, because you know, in American Indian cultures, they would do this ceremony of the snake bite, right? They would, in order to become immune to the snake bite, they would have to allow themselves to be bit enough times to where it could no longer harm them,
Build up their immunity.
build up their immunity, and it can no longer harm them. And so that's what happens when you hit rock bottom, right? You're
Mm-hmm.
being presented with an opportunity to become someone completely different, really.
Oh, I like it.
Take all the things that happen and use them to your benefit. And that's where projection plays a role. The fighting the bad traits, the boarding up. When you open up all those boarded up doors, you know,
Mm-hmm.
you realize when you befriend them and integrate them, transmute them into your being, they now become gifts. They now become tools. They now
Mm-hmm.
become strength, wisdom, growth, uh, um, empowerment, self-empowerment.
They now
Um,
become the project, which was the part of the plan, the draft, the scheme. They become part of the plan, the draft, or the scheme. And if you go back to the 4 and the 4 of Wands, the 4 itself, it is the builder who must submit the earthly thing to earthly things, where form and substance
wow.
are the predominant elements. So think about when we were talking about the scheme and putting the plans together, drawing out the map. The builder, when you go back to the contract again, the contract. So when you sign the contract with the builder on your new home, which should be you, right? That version, your subconscious, whatever, you're gonna get into that. But let's bring it out into the world to make it make pictorial sense. You sign the contract with the new builder of yourself, your home, your castle. You got that contract. So you say,
Yeah.
this is what I wanted, this is what I imagine I could be. And they say, okay, we're gonna get back to you in a few weeks. We're gonna draw up the plans. We're gonna create the scheme, the blueprint. We're gonna put the lines down. We're gonna have
Draft.
it. Yes, the draft.
Hmm. Yes. And But you can't do that until you go back to your castle and you open those doors. Ask yourself, folks, when you're out and about, if you get triggered by something, you see something you really don't like, deception, greed, you know, until you own up that you have that in you, we all do, it will continue to control you inadvertently. You know, you'll be puppeteered by it.
Mm-hmm.
That's why it's so freeing when you finally go, yeah, I could see that I've done that. I've been selfish.
Mm-hmm.
I've been a bitch. I am sometimes. And you give yourself permission. It's like a game changer. It's this whole other level of freedom.
Yeah.
That you don't have to fight it anymore within yourself. There's just, it's really such a freeing feeling. And then you can, I wouldn't say control, but you can manage things so much better when you allow yourself to just to be real and
Right.
to, you know, own up to all that you are.
It's a healing, isn't it?
Very, oh my gosh, very empowering. And you know, so all those things you thought were so horrible end up being gifts. Like I said, they end up being really amazing, transformative elements in your life. Yeah.
So when we go back to the 4, right? The number 4 also, I'm a fan of it. It stands for work, right? So everything you're talking about, you got to put the work in. So it took work to go in and for you to be, or for one to be coaxed out of the enjoyment of all the castled rooms they had before. That took work, right? And then it took work for you to go in and decide to lock up all them doors and lock them away. And even if you went as far as demolishing part of the castle, right? So it's going to take work, which is also what 4 means in construction. Okay. It's going to take the work to do the construction to, one, rebuild your endurance, right? Which is also symbolic of 4, so that you can rebuild anew. I like how you said you got to go back to the old house, the old castle, and open the doors, because you need to know what all you really enjoyed and missed from the old place to tell the new contractor what all you better make sure you have in the new one. And that is another reflection of the word 4, which is discipline. And every time you,
I was just gonna say that, discipline.
we on a vibe today, Trish. And then every time you excel in one of those key words we just went over, it's a time for celebration. And that's why you see the party going on out front of the new home. And you know what? Look at this. Look at this. Now I know you can't, I know this. Okay, so there's 5 flags going, or 6 flags going across the front, right? And then there's 6 flags going off back across the back too, which is 3. And 3 is like, it combines the qualities of like expansive, sociable, dramatic, communicative, diversified, and creative. So when you add the 6 and 6, that's 12, and that's 3. So it's going to take you're going to have to become expansive, because you don't become small. Someone has made you smaller because they made you close off all the rooms. So now you got to go back to expanding. And to do that, you got to get sociable with the right people, because apparently the ones that were there, it was part of why you got small. And then you're going to have to become communicative. You're gonna have to talk about it. You know what I mean? You're gonna have to, like you said, learn to be able to now freely speak about that internal stuff that you wasn't fond of in your own existence. So you're gonna have to become creative to do that, so you can reach the 4 and go back into the construction and all this stuff that you're talking about with the new builder. Wow.
Yeah. It's funny how it's all interconnected, huh? Really, as you get older, you just go, oh my God, that's connected to that. That's what they meant by that. And but all things aside, what we're talking about when it comes to projection, it's just important. That's why they say it's so important to be in the moment, because you can catch yourself doing these things, you can catch yourself judging people and you know, pigeonholing them or deeming them a certain way. And if you're in the moment, you can say, why do I do that? How come I always get upset when I see somebody behave this way? I just get so upset. You know, it always comes to what's going on inside of you. So pretty much everything that we feel and experience has to do with these truths that we're talking about.
Right.
And projection is a signal. It's connected to the trigger. It really just, and I'm still working on it myself. Everything that I'm saying, people, I am not some master of, but I do understand these truths. I have experienced them and I have gotten to the other side of them. And I'm like, wow.
Mm-hmm.
And then your perception, it opens up your perception of things, and it allows for growth. So
Exactly. And then when we brought up the word discipline, listening to what you just said,
discipline,
it
yes.
made me what you were just saying, it made me think about the quote that I'll be using. The hardest part of having any wisdom is constantly remaining disciplined to the knowledge. So if you look at the card again, right? If we take a look at the card again, hold on, bam. On the tambourine, I was just sitting here looking at it, and on the tambourine, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 little, whatever you want to call them, the clapper parts of the tambourine. And
Yeah.
7 is all about answers. So once you put in the work, you'll get
I just looked at the clock and it's 7:09.
bam.
We said 7. It's been constant. The synchronicities as of late of just every little detail now. It's like more and more
And guess what
synchronicity.
709
So
is?
what is 7:09?
It's still 7, because 7 and 9 is 16 and 1 and 6 is still is 7.
Oh, I would never.
We
Oh
can't
my
make this stuff
God.
up. So
Oh my gosh.
so
Wow.
now once you put in the work that we were just discussing before, right?
Yeah.
You'll if go back to the tambourine in her hand, you'll have the answers now in your grasp. Whoa.
I
Whoa.
think this is why metaphors are so important. We're presented with them all the time. All the time. That's when you look at the cards, you look at everything on the card. Everything is a message, a metaphor of something. That's so cool. I don't know why, but you said the 6 flags, and it made me think of Six Flags Magic Mountain.
Right. The amusement
Why 6
part.
flags? The amusement part, yeah. Because see, now that I'm starting to know these metaphors and numbers and symbolism and all that, you know, you realize everything's a message if you get yourself in the right perspective. But that's a whole other conversation. It just made me think of that.
It ties directly into this, Trish, because
Yeah.
I like when the energy does that. Now look, let me tell you why. Because we got if no matter if this home here in the card is the old one that was destroyed, or that you closed all the doors off or whatever, you have to go back in and open it back up and make it the amusement park of yourself again. And even if it's the new one, the new one is going to be the new and improved amusement park of yourself, so that you can go in and enjoy yourself once again. And it does kind of like, one of them big circus tents, the carnival tents or something out there, with something going on in there, like some games or something.
It does. Yeah. Magic Mountain.
There you go.
It's one of the places we love to go to as kids. That's great roller coasters and stuff here in California. But Six Flags is all around the country. They have amusement parks. But the Six Flag thing is very interesting. Why Six Flags? So, and you kind of helped me sort of understand the Six Flag aspect. So that's kind of cool.
Hey,
Side note, people here.
Always the perfect day, man.
I'm always analyzing everything. My mind is just, sometimes I have to go, oh, stop, you know what I mean? But it's constant. But projection is, I wanted to talk about it just because it's some deep stuff. There's a lot to it. As you've seen in the book, where she's peeling back some of the layers of projection and why we do this, why we project, where it comes from. And it, judgment that we've been taught since really early on that are just need some revisions, you know, and that's what you're talking about, going back and revising your castle.
Exactly.
And
Get the new contract and get the
yes,
blueprints, and now you got the map. You got the
now
map.
you got the map. Yes, and you are the architect.
You are the architect, the alchemist.
The alchemist. Yes, and it's so true. It really does. Everything comes down to what's going on with ourselves. I had such a wonderful conversation with a friend of mine today who is realizing she doesn't love herself, hasn't loved herself, and how she set herself up, how she built a faulty castle.
Okay.
You know, an unstable castle, and she's having to go back and open some of these doors up and of understanding herself and how she got herself to where she is. This is painful stuff too, people. This is not always, like you said, it's work. You have to be willing to be honest with yourself about why you're doing what you're doing, why you've been doing it, and that's not easy.
Right.
So what we're talking about here is not poof, you just snap your fingers. It's a lot of work, but you have to, it's the willingness. You have to be willing to be honest with yourself and look at yourself. And yes.
You see the gray hairs? You see these gray hairs?
Oh,
That's what it's gonna, you know what I mean? I think everybody's
yeah.
doing some, and
Circle.
everybody's got to do this at some point to themselves. No matter how good of life you think you got, no matter how rich you think you are, no matter how many significant others you got, like everybody's got to do this at some point in their life for something. How do you think it holds up in relationships?
Well, I was going to say it speaks of the truth of everywhere you go, there you are. Everything around you is a reflection of yourself on some level. In relationships, oh, you know, the ultimate relationship is the one with yourself, and that's what we're talking about. Our relationship with ourselves, which was the one that I was talking with my friend. You know, if your happiness is hinged upon what somebody else does, you're really setting yourself up to be let down.
Right.
Because and happiness, even that, I'd love to just talk about happiness for a podcast and the idea of happiness and our attachment to the idea of happiness, but a contentment with yourself, you know, if you don't have that, it's not going to go well in your relationship. If you don't have a good relationship with yourself, this is my analogy, my metaphor, you're the cake. If you don't know that, you're really going to set yourself up. You know, we cannot be responsible for somebody else's happiness. And even if we try to take it on, we see where that gets us. That gets us to the metaphor that you talked about before, when you go out to save a drowning person and they don't want to save themselves and don't realize this about what's going on with them, they will take you down too.
Yeah.
With them.
Yeah.
Even you cannot save people
that don't want to be saved, right? Because even that listening, when you said they got to listen to the instructions, even that listening part is like the equivalent on their side of it. They got to put in the work, which is for in that moment, they got to listen to the instructions and do, or else, you know, so.
They have to do it. Nobody can do it for you. That's why I shared that meme today. No one can walk your road for you. It's your road. But if you're putting it in somebody else's hands, it's just not going to go well. And so many people, and this is my dear friend today, I speak lovingly about this situation of she's realizing the person that's been missing in her life is herself.
Exactly.
Herself. If you have a void of loneliness, it comes from not feeling loved from others. Loneliness comes from not feeling love from others. But when you love yourself, it doesn't matter who doesn't love you, because you got your own back. If you don't have your own back, you're going to suffer. You're going to be codependent. You're going to be needy. You're not going to feel good enough because you're waiting for someone else to give it to you. And true love and contentment and happiness can only come from yourself. And
give it to
she's
me.
learning that. Yes.
Sweet, that gushy stuff.
Yeah. You know what I mean? I mean, she's realized, oh my gosh, you know, I'm so lonely and I'm sad. And I'm like, what's causing that feeling? Well, they don't ever call me. And how come they don't include me? How can you need that from them? You know?
Or Or how come you didn't own the moment and give them a call, maybe?
Well, I look at it like, if you want, and then there's the other part, if you want people to call you, if you're always doing the calling,
Mhm.
stop calling them and make the space for them to call you.
Facts.
You
And you,
want it that return, you have to stop blocking it by doing all the calling, doing all the giving.
Mhm.
They're just going to take it. But if you stop and you allow yourself some time and you open the door and you make the space for them to give to, then it can happen. But if you're always blocking it, it's not going to happen. You know, you have to, it's an ebb and flow. But if you're always doing the giving, there's no opening for them to give back. You know, you're overcompensating.
right.
And so, you know, I told her, if you want this people that you love so much and, you know, family members and whatnot, stop calling them. And first of all, you'll find out if they even care enough to call you. But ultimately, you're creating the space for them to call you by not calling, you know, balance, balance. Because if you do that, you have uneven relationships. You're doing all the work and it's exhausting. But bottom line, even before that, even above all of that, it just, if what someone else does, we're holding ourselves hostage and holding our happiness and contentment hostage until this person does or doesn't do this. You're never going to win like that. You
Right.
have to be able to meet your own needs. You have to be able to love yourself. And so many people don't even know what that looks like. We talked about this before, you know. You say you don't love yourself. And people get upset and triggered. Why do you keep saying I don't love myself and I need to love myself? And, and it's like, well, obviously you don't know because you're asking me that. You really don't know. And I don't mean that derogatory. I don't mean that
No,
in a
it's an
derogatory way.
opportunity.
Yeah, you know, people don't even know what that looks like. And really the it just comes down to that if you're giving all your power and your sense of self to someone else, it's not going to go well.
Mhm.
Nobody should have that much responsibility. It's not healthy. It's codependent. Relationships, they start with your relationship with yourself first. Once you have that one intact, everything else will fall together. Once you have the cake, everything else is icing,
I like it.
you know. But people keep trying to fill the void with icing, and it just doesn't work like that.
Mhm. Mhm. Like,
You're the cake.
what, and what's I find is ironic in this also with the projection, with its relationship to gaslighting, how similar
Oh,
the defense mechanisms for being projected on is to actually gaslighting itself. Like, I have some notes here, and some of them, the four I have here, are like, that's your opinion. I don't take responsibility for that. I disagree. And then the famous, I don't see it like that, or I don't see it that way.
okay. When you're telling someone a boundary
Mm-hmm.
in any relationship, and you're saying this is a boundary for me, well, I don't see it that way. Well, I don't need you to see it that way. First of all, my boundary, it's not your boundary. And I just went through this with a family member. I'm not asking for your agreement. So I'm not asking for your approval to have my boundaries. My boundaries.
Right,
This is what
right.
I'm comfortable with and what I'm not comfortable with. Whether you agree with it or not is irrelevant. And then, yeah, so this happens a lot. You see this a lot.
Yeah, because you be telling them, like, somebody will ask you a question about you, and then they'll start telling you about them, as if they're gonna want to make you them in the answer that you're supposed to give or what it just gave. And it's like, I thought we were talking about, I thought you wanted to know, like you said, what my boundary was. And you
Here's the
basically
thing.
translate it
I
to, I don't
went
see
through
it like
this.
that.
I just went through this over the last few months with a family member who has a partner that's been very abusive to me. When I
Okay.
finally got the courage to tell my family member, this isn't going to work. I cannot, I'm not going to have this person in my life. Why are you doing this to me? Wait a minute. To the family member, I say,
Mhm.
your partner threw me out of your house. And I'm doing this to you by saying it's not acceptable and it's a boundary. And they've crossed this boundary more than once. You know, And I've given them chances and given them chances. And when somebody throws me out, that's it.
Mhm.
But I'm doing this to you? Yeah, I don't think so. I'm talking about what behavior and what treatment I'm willing to accept. This has nothing to do with you. This has to do with me. You want me to continue to be in this situation with this person that you have decided to have a relationship with. And so now you're holding our relationship hostage, and you're telling me I cannot have a relationship with you unless unless I continue to have a relationship with this abusive person who threw me out of their house.
Mhm.
And but the projection, even in the end, when I finally put my foot down, I said, I have my boundaries, and my family members said, so do I. I'm like, you don't get it.
Yeah.
This isn't about you. It's about me and what is acceptable treatment to me.
Mhm.
You don't get to tell me what I'm supposed to accept and not accept. Sorry, you do not own me just because you're a family member. I don't owe you shit. Sorry if I sound stern, but sometimes you got to be stern.
You
If
gotta
they
set
don't
your
get it,
boundary.
it's like, what? You have a boundary? Wait, for something that was done to me. They'll try to twist this stuff away and around. People do not accept that. No, it's your boundary. Whether they agree with it and whatever their opinion is irrelevant. It's your life. You get to decide what is accepting, what treatment is acceptable and what isn't. Nobody else. Nobody else.
Mhm.
Even if they say, well, I do this and I do that, well, that's you. I ain't living your life. I'm living my life. And my life is my life.
Living la vida loca.
you know, and but they'll do that. People will do that when they don't, they'll turn it on you. That's gaslighting.
Mhm.
Big time gaslighting.
So we done covered a lot of the negativity, not the negativity. We done covered a lot of the negativity associated with projection. We done talked about the defense mechanisms for it. I'm sitting here and I was looking earlier on at this when we were looking at the card, and I was like, you know what? This is the positive side of projecting. When you have mastery of it, this is the equivalent of, okay, you're in that rock bottom situation now, and you know what? You put this up on your mirror, and now it becomes your vision board. You
Yes,
want the house, you want the answers, you want the Six Flags, so the amusement park feeling of being
the
able
dream,
the dream.
your
And
dream.
apparently you have company, and you're not by yourself, like you were saying, you're not alone. And that could be,
Support.
yes, support. I like that.
When
So
you support
flip it.
yourself, you attract support, right?
Mm-hmm.
When
Mm.
we are supportive to ourselves, this is what I was telling my friend. You're being supportive to yourself. You're feeling that void for yourself, and watch what happens.
Facts.
Watch what happens. You will draw to you what you are, how you are.
Yep.
Um, it really, it's not easy. We're not saying, oh, it's all just easy, but these are the truths that are really important to free yourself from mental slavery, as Bob Marley says.
I like it.
Yeah,
So I think we covered this one pretty deep, and it was
yeah,
this was really fun too.
yes.
This is
I
really
love the
fun.
cards. I love that you put the cards, and I think metaphors are so important. People miss them all the time. I used to. Songwriters have helped me kind of incorporate metaphors
Mhm.
and understand what they are, and they're messages too. They truly are. That's why when you pick up the card, there's all these things, all these metaphors in the cards, all these symbols,
Mhm.
flags, tents, circus tents, tambourines. They all have a message in them.
Yeah,
And
it's exciting.
yes,
I
yes,
like that part of it, the puzzle, so to speak, of being able to connect it, and the energy. So I appreciate, thank you for, I'm glad that you enjoy the cards element to it. It's something I was meaning to get back to for in this type of fashion, um in the productions overall. So it's really therapeutic.
yes.
Hey,
Oh my gosh, yes.
so do you have any other elements you wanna cover or
I would like to
uncover,
get the book
unlock?
and read it again. I think
Okay.
it's time, and it's a signal that it's time to revisit it. And then I would love to have you come and join my podcast, and we can talk about whatever in the book that you really liked, you got something out of it and whatnot. And maybe we may even do a couple more of these, because there's a lot to this. We can maybe break it down. As we go along, we'll see where it takes us. But for today, I think we did good. I think this is a really good icebreaker on the topic of projection and how it is such a big part of how we interact with ourselves and others.
I agree. I'm reading the book now. I'm in the process of reading the book. So absolutely, if you want a refresher on it and we can, decide on some topics, that would be amazing, because I like your perspective on it. And by all means, anyway, you were the one that, recommended the book for me. So that would be dope that we review it together. And yeah, I really, this was a really deep and heavy topic. And I'm kind of like surprised how light and airy we are in this right now, in the sense of it. You know what I mean? I think this is gonna be really refreshing for everybody that got to partake in this conversation with us.
This timing I got goosebumps because right now, this timing could not be more perfect on this topic, because I realized I had to come to terms with a projection, with something I hadn't been dealing with, a toxic trait that I was adhering to, a behavior that was not good, not healthy. And I had to get real and face it. And I may even share some of that in the next podcast. I'm still working and sorting through it, but I've had a shift. And that's why I thought projection. That's why I thought this, because you can have such big shifts when you really understand how this stuff works for yourself. Like, it just helps you understand who you are so much more.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Sometimes, you gotta get that toxicity out. Sometimes you got that big shit stuck in you. You gotta take a little shift and get it up out of you. And then you can put your vision board up, right? and go to Six Flags. You don't want to be on the Six Flags ride full of shit, right? That's not gonna be fun.
Oh my Lord.
All right, Trish McCabe.
Yay. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Pasha
All
Power.
right.
Pasha Power, YNS7. Thank you for tuning. The replay. Trish McCabe, say bye.
Thank you. Till next time.
Enjoy.